The crystal chandelier in the grand lobby of the Ritz-Carlton, Chicago, spilled brilliant golden light, glittering off expensive champagne flutes and the diamond strands around the ladies' necks. It was 8:05 p.m. on Saturday, my and Mark's 10th wedding anniversary. I stood on the low stage, microphone in hand, smiling down at a crowd of 200 guests. In front of me was Mark, my husband, the man Forbes had honored as Entrepreneur of the Year, standing beside Jessica. Jessica, my best friend from college, the bridesmaid who sobbed at my wedding 10 years ago because she was so happy for you, and also the woman my husband had been sleeping with for the past 18 months. They stood there, the perfect polite distance apart. But I saw everything. I saw how the red heel of Jessica's stilettos angled slightly toward Mark. I saw the way Mark stole glances at the deep V of her neckline when he thought no one noticed. They thought they were brilliant actors in a play where I was a blind audience. Mark looked at me and raised his glass, those charming blue eyes narrowing with fake affection. He thought the blue velvet gift box in my hands held the Patek Philippe watch he'd been subtly hinting at for a month. He was very wrong. If you've made it this far and you hate cheaters who think they're smarter than everyone else, hit subscribe right now. Because what happens in the next 15 minutes is the truest definition of karma hitting back. I took a deep breath, letting the scent of expensive perfume and the room's artificial sweetness flood my lungs, and then I spoke. Thank you all for being here tonight. 10 years, a decade. People say marriage is the greatest business partnership of a lifetime. And looking at Mark, looking at what we've built, I couldn't agree more. The entire ballroom applauded. Mark smiled, the sunny smile that had closed thousands of deals. He took a step forward, ready to soak up the spotlight. But I wasn't finished. Let me tell you a little about this partnership before I open that velvet box. 12 years ago, Mark wasn't the CEO of Stellar Logistics. He was a mediocre real estate salesman with a miserable 540 credit score and an old Honda Civic that always leaked oil onto my driveway. He had looks and a smooth mouth, but he didn't have a strategic brain. I was different. I was the nerd. I graduated top of my class in finance and supply chain management. When Mark came up with the idea for a logistics company, I was the one writing the business plan at 2 a.m. while he snored. I was the one who used every penny of the inheritance my grandmother left me as the deposit for our first warehouse. But Mark's ego was bigger than the Empire State Building. He didn't want to be his wife's employee. Babe, he once told me in our second year of startup life when we were eating instant noodles in a cramped rented office. You're good with numbers. You handle the back end. Let me be the face. Men need the respect to deal with partners. You don't even like crowds, right? I believed him. Because I loved him. And because I thought we were a team. I stepped back. I was the unofficial CFO, the shadow COO. I fixed the ridiculous contracts he signed without thinking. I optimized every delivery route to save every penny. I built the Stellar Logistics empire from zero to a $50 million valuation, and the world only knew Mark. Mark the talented one, Mark the charming one, Mark the self-made genius. I accepted it. I didn't need the spotlight. I needed a family. But Mark's change came slowly and dangerously, like cancer. When our bank account hit 7 figures, Mark started to shift. Custom Italian suits replaced off-the-rack. Partner meetings, business trips got longer, and he brought Jessica into the company as Director of Communications. Jessica, the best friend who always said, "Sarah, you're so lucky. I only wish I could find someone half as good as Mark." I was too busy keeping the company ship from sinking under Mark's reckless spending to notice the way they looked at each other at Christmas parties. I trusted too much to question it when Jessica accidentally left her lipstick in Mark's car. Until exactly 6 months ago, it was a Tuesday afternoon. Mark said he was golfing with a client. I needed his signature on a restructuring loan, so I used Find My iPhone, the feature he stupidly assumed I couldn't access because Sarah is hopeless with tech. The location wasn't at the golf course. It was at a boutique hotel 40 miles away. I didn't drive there to make a scene. I didn't call and cry. I sat down, opened my laptop, and logged into the dashcam system on the Tesla he'd just bought. He'd turned off the camera, but he forgot to disable the automatic audio recording when there was movement in the car. And I heard everything. Jessica's giggles. Mark's voice saying, "My wife is such a drag. All she does is bury her face in Excel spreadsheets. Once this IPO is done, I'll kick her to the curb with a few crumbs. The company's in my name anyway." In that moment, my heart shattered. But the cold CFO brain inside me woke up. I realized something. Mark and Jessica had made a deadly mistake. The classic mistake of smug narcissists. They thought I was stupid. They thought my silence was obedience. They thought letting Mark hold the CEO title meant I didn't hold real power. Mark had forgotten who drafted every legal document the company ever signed. He'd forgotten who managed the family trusts. And most importantly, he'd forgotten about a stack of papers he had signed in a rush 3 months earlier, wedged between tax files while he was busy sexting Jessica. Back in the present, the spotlight hit my face, making my jet-black evening gown sparkle. "Mark," I said into the mic, my voice sweet but cold as dry ice. "You always say you like big surprises. You always say you want a 10-year anniversary with something explosive, something this entire city will talk about." I saw Mark's smile stiffen. Maybe he sensed something off in my tone. Beside him, Jessica shifted, her hand tightening around her clutch. "So," I continued, lifting the velvet box high, "instead of a traditional gift, I prepared a little show. A short film looking back at our journey. And more importantly, an announcement about the future of stellar logistics." I glanced toward the tech table where the operator, the one I'd slipped $500 in cash to before showtime, waited for my signal. "Everyone, please look at the big screen." Mark let out a relieved breath. He leaned toward Jessica and whispered, probably, "It's just a wedding montage. Don't worry." I looked at him with pure pity. He didn't know the velvet box didn't hold a watch, and the massive LED screen behind him was about to display something that would burn his life to ash in minutes. He thought he was the king on the chessboard. But he forgot one thing. The queen is the piece that can go anywhere she wants. And tonight, the queen was delivering checkmate. Before that massive LED screen showed its first image, I need to rewind a little. To understand why I could stand here calm as a god of vengeance instead of a devastated wife, you need to see how this tumor metastasized. People say men cheat for sex. Wrong. Men like Mark cheat for power. When Stellar Logistics first hit $10 million in revenue, Mark developed a full-blown god complex. He believed everything he touched turned to gold. He started dismissing my financial warnings as women's nagging. And that's when Jessica walked in, not as a friend, but as a drug for his swelling ego. Jessica knew nothing about logistics. She couldn't even tell a bill of lading from an airway bill. But she knew how to stroke Mark's ego. She was promoted to brand director at $150,000 a year. Double the salary of the operations manager who'd worked for us for 5 years. The peak of the humiliation wasn't that they slept together. It was what happened last month in the glass conference room. That day, I found a $45,000 shortfall in the marketing fund. The invoice said, "Market research in Milan," but it was really Jessica's 5-day shopping trip. I set the file folder on the conference table in front of Mark and 3 other department heads. "Mark, this expense is not legitimate. She used company money to buy Hermes bags and stay in 5-star hotels. That's embezzlement." Mark didn't even look at the folder. He leaned back, glanced at Jessica, who was filing her nails with that fake bored expression, then turned to me with a sneer. "Sarah, here we go again. Jessica is building her personal image to represent the company. That's branding. Your thinking is outdated. That's why you should stay behind the computer instead of running things. Don't kill everyone's vibe over pocket change." The room went silent. The longtime employees lowered their eyes, embarrassed for me. Jessica curled her lip into a winner's smile. "Exactly, Sarah. You should relax. Stop acting like some cranky old aunt guarding the money." In that moment, something in me died. But something else, far more dangerous, rose up. I didn't scream. I didn't throw water in their faces. I simply closed the folder, smiled softly, and said, "You're right, Mark. Maybe I should worry less." That night, I didn't cry. I got to work. They thought I was a housewife who knew a little bookkeeping. They forgot I was the one who built the entire IT and security system from day one. I held the master admin key Mark didn't even know existed. For the past 30 days, while Mark lied about going to conferences and Jessica checked in at luxury resorts, I lived 2 lives. By day, I was the good wife, the agreeable CFO. By night, I was a digital detective. I logged into Mark's iCloud account. He used Jessica's birthday as the password. Pathetic. I downloaded the entire chat history, including deleted messages. I backed up GPS location data from the Tesla. I pulled office security footage, capturing them making out on my desk when I was away. But proof of cheating was only a psychological punch. To destroy someone like Mark, I had to hit what he loved more than Jessica, more than me, more than himself: money and reputation. I combed through 5 years of books, and I found it. Mark wasn't just wasting money on his mistress. He'd siphoned company funds into sham real estate projects under his own name to dodge taxes. He'd falsified numbers to secure bank loans. Every PDF file, every audio clip, every backroom email, I saved it all to a triple encrypted hard drive. I named the folder Project Armageddon. And then the golden opportunity appeared, my secret weapon. 3 months ago, Mark wanted to restructure the company to prepare for a new funding round. He was too lazy to read paperwork. He always said, "Point me to where I need to sign and I'll sign. Lawyer language gives me a headache." I drafted a 200-page packet, buried between boring clauses about insurance and employee benefits. On page 142, Clause 18B, was a special asset and control transfer agreement. A perfect legal trap. The day he signed, he was busy sexting Jessica. I still remember him holding his Mont Blanc pen, eyes glued to his phone, lips twitching with a grin. "Here, babe," he asked, not reading a single word. "Yes, honey. Just a procedure to protect your personal assets from litigation risk," I replied. Sweet as poisoned honey. "Good. Handle it." Scratch. His flamboyant signature appeared on the page. The moment the pen lifted, I knew he was done. He had just signed his own death warrant without even realizing it. Back to tonight's glamorous ballroom. The massive LED screen behind Mark flickered to life. Not the company logo. Not a romantic wedding montage. A harsh static bzzzt crackled through the speakers, pulling all 200 guests' attention. Mark turned, the smile on his lips starting to twist. Jessica stopped drinking. The champagne flute in her hand trembled. The first image appeared. Not a blurry photo, a razor-sharp 4K dashcam video from the Tesla, aimed straight at the driver and passenger seats. The timestamp was crystal clear, 0/14, Valentine's Day, the day Mark claimed he had to meet partners in Boston. In the video, Mark drove with one hand, the other resting on Jessica's thigh. The audio rang out, perfectly clear in the dead-silent ballroom. Mark's voice. "I swear, looking at old Sarah at home makes me sick. She's like my second mother. Once I get that lakeside mansion, I'll toss her out. You're my queen, Jessica." The Ritz-Carlton ballroom let out a shocked gasp. Somewhere, a glass hit the floor and shattered with a sharp crack. I looked at Mark. His face drained from rosy to paper white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He whipped around to look at me. And me? I simply lifted my glass, smiled, and whispered into the mic, loud enough for the whole world to hear, "Happy anniversary, darling." But that was only the appetizer. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom erupted like a kicked beehive. Whispers exploded into a roar of uncontrollable chatter. Mark charged at me like a wounded animal, face blazing red, veins bulging in his neck. He yanked the microphone from my hand and shouted so hard the speakers squealed, "Turn it off! Tech, where are you? Turn that damn screen off, now!" Then he spun to the crowd, forcing a warped smile, trying to salvage his last scrap of dignity. "Ladies and gentlemen, please forgive this. My wife, Sarah. She's been under a lot of stress lately. She's mentally unstable and paranoid. That video is a deepfake. AI. These days anyone can make that kind of garbage." Jessica stood beside him, pale as a sheet, but her parasite survival instinct kicked in. She stepped forward, put a hand on Mark's arm, and performed extreme concern, looking at me like I was an escaped psych patient. "Sarah, I know you're jealous, but this is too much. We're family. You need to go home and rest." I laughed, softly but cold enough to make Jessica pull her hand back. "Family?" I repeated, no mic needed, my voice ringing sharp. "You sleep with your best friend's husband 3 days a week and call that family?" Right then, Jerry, Mark's personal attorney and the company's, a bald man in a baggy gray suit, slipped through the crowd and stepped onto the stage. Jerry was the kind of lawyer who'd sell his soul to the devil for the right price. He leaned close to my ear, hissing, "Sarah, stop right now. What you're doing is defamation and invasion of privacy. If you don't get off the stage immediately, I guarantee you'll leave with nothing and face criminal penalties. Mark will divorce you and you won't get a cent." Hearing that, Mark regained a shred of composure. He adjusted his tie and looked at me with that familiar contempt, the look he used whenever I talked about the household budget. "You hear that, Sarah?" Mark sneered, lowering his voice so only the three of us could hear. "You think this stupid video can take me down? I'm Mark Reynolds. I am Stellar Logistics. You're just a jealous housewife. Tomorrow my lawyers will crush you. Now get off the stage before security drags you out." This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The arrogance. The blind confidence. I didn't answer Mark. I slowly opened the blue velvet box in my hands, the box he still believed held a Patek Philippe. There was no watch inside, just a black USB drive and a slim stack of neatly clipped documents. I pulled the stack out and held it up in front of Jerry and Mark. "Jerry, you're a good lawyer," I said, my voice shifting into work mode, sharp as a scalpel. "Do you remember the corporate restructuring packet you skimmed 3 months ago? The 200-page packet Mark signed in a hurry so he wouldn't be late for golf with Jessica?" Jerry frowned. His professional instincts told him something was wrong. He snatched the documents from my hand. "What is this?" Mark snapped. "Read it, Mark," I said, arms crossed. "Page 142, Clause 18b. Section: Breach of Fiduciary Duty and Automatic Trigger Transfer Clause." Jerry flipped pages fast, sweat starting to bead on his forehead. His eyes darted over the tiny print. His face shifted from healthy pink to ashen gray. "No way," Jerry muttered, hands shaking. "Mark, you signed this? What the hell is that?" Mark yelled, yanking the page from Jerry. I stepped forward, looked straight into my husband's eyes, and explained every word slowly and clearly, like teaching a slow child. That clause states, if the sitting CEO commits conduct that seriously damages the company's reputation, including a sexual scandal with verifiable evidence, or embezzles company funds over $10,000. I paused and glanced at Jessica, who was trembling. Then ownership of the CEO's 51% controlling stake automatically triggers a buyback option by the co-founder, me, Sarah Reynolds, at a pre-agreed fixed price. Mark stared at the page, but I knew he didn't understand the legal language. He looked up and laughed. "Are you insane? Buy back my shares? With what money? This company is valued at $50 million. I smiled, the sweetest smile of the night. "You forgot to read the last line of the clause, honey. The fixed price for a severe ethics breach is..." I leaned in close and whispered the death number into his ear. $1. That's right. $1 USD. Both Jerry and Mark froze. The air on the stage thickened. Mark gaped at me, then laughed. Loud, fake, and terrified. He tore the paper in half and threw it to the floor. "You think this scrap of paper scares me?" he roared, trying to drown his fear with volume. "I'll sue you. I'll hire the best lawyers in New York. The court will void this contract. You're my wife. Assets are marital. You can't steal my company for $1. Jerry tried to steady himself too, clearing his throat. "Sarah, this clause is very unusual. A court will consider it unfair. You can't enforce it right here. Mark is still the lawful CEO." They still thought they had a way out. They still thought this would be a years-long civil fight where Mark's money and connections would save him. I glanced at my watch. 8:25 p.m. "You're wrong," I said, calm enough to be chilling. "I don't have to wait for court. I don't have to wait for your lawsuits." I pointed to the LED screen behind us, where the affair video had stopped, and a computer interface was now loading. "Because, Mark, you forgot one thing. You signed paper documents, but you also provided biometrics and a digital signature to authenticate the company's blockchain system I set up last year. This agreement is a smart contract. It executes automatically once the input conditions are verified. And the input conditions," I raised the USB drive, "are the evidence of embezzlement and cheating that I uploaded to the board portal 5 minutes ago. In other words," I stared into Mark's eyes, now filled with real panic, "the transfer isn't something that will happen. It already happened." I turned to the crowd, lifted the mic one last time before delivering the killing blow. "Mark, Jerry, Jessica, you think you still have power? Check your phones." 3 notification chimes rang almost at the same time. First Mark's phone, then Jerry's. And finally the violent buzzing from Jessica's jeweled clutch. Mark shakily pulled out his phone. The lock screen lit up with a string of bright red alerts from the banking app and internal company email. "Alert! Your Platinum credit card has been declined. System notice. Admin access for account CEO Mark R has been revoked. Auto email. Share transfer confirmed under Smart Contract Protocol. 8821. As a lawyer, Jerry understood faster than anyone what was happening. His face went bloodless. He stared at his iPad, where Stellar Logistics' ownership chart had just changed right in front of him. The name Mark Reynolds disappeared, replaced completely by Sarah Reynolds Holdings, LLC. You actually triggered it, Jerry stammered, stepping back as if I were a live bomb. Mark, we're done. She has 100% control. Every company asset is hers now. No! Mark screamed, hurling his newest iPhone onto the floor where it shattered. He lunged at me, but two huge security guards, hired from the city's top private security firm, stepped in instantly, blocking him like a wall of meat. You can't do this. I have my own assets. I have money in my personal accounts. Mark screamed over the guard's shoulders, spit flying. I'll pull it all out and start a new company. I'll crush you. I sighed and shook my head, like I was watching a child refuse to understand basic math. Mark, Mark, Mark. I stepped closer, facing him through the guards. You still don't get it, do you? You think you're rich? I signaled the technician to advance the slide on the big screen. A complex Excel spreadsheet appeared, negative numbers highlighted in screaming red. Let me explain your real financial situation, I said, my voice echoing through the suddenly silent room. You live lavishly. You buy supercars. You bankroll Jessica. But where does the money come from? You borrowed against your company shares. You used corporate credit cards for personal spending. I pointed to the screen. The instant you lost the CEO title and your shares, all that debt, poof, became bad debt and came due immediately. The bank just triggered the recall clause. The penthouse you're living in? Sealed by the bank? The Ferrari? Being towed right now? And your personal accounts? I smiled. I'm afraid the current balance is negative $3.5 million. Mark stood frozen. He stared at the screen, at the taunting red numbers dancing in front of him. Then he turned to Jessica, his last shred of hope. But Jessica was backing away. She looked at Mark like he was trash. 15 minutes ago, she was swearing love. Now she was calculating her exit. Without money, Mark was just a failed, indebted, middle-aged man. But, Mark rasped, voice shaking, I still have my reputation. I can rebuild. That's why we're getting to the fun part. I cut him off. The final trump card. I pulled a thick brown envelope from my purse, stamped with a bright red seal. I didn't give it to Mark. I handed it to Jerry. Attorney Jerry, take a look. This is a copy of the file I plan to send to the IRS and the FBI tomorrow morning, about Mark setting up shell companies in the Cayman Islands to launder money and evade taxes for the past 3 years. Jerry opened the envelope. His hands shook so badly a few pages slipped to the floor. He skimmed, then snapped his head up to stare at Mark in horror. Mark, you signed fake invoices for $2 million? Are you out of your mind? This is federal prison. 10 to 15 years? Jerry shouted, tossing the file back like it was infected. He turned to me, pleading. Sarah, I knew nothing about this. I'm only outside counsel. I had nothing to do with money laundering. Mark collapsed. He sank to the floor, clutching his head. The arrogance vanished completely, replaced by the raw terror of an animal cornered. Federal prison, bankruptcy, losing everything. I stepped forward and stood over him like a judge. Mark, listen carefully, I said, ice in my voice. I don't want to spend the next 2 years in court fighting you. It's a waste of my time. So I'm giving you one last mercy. I pulled out a thin document, one single page. This is a voluntary resignation letter and a waiver of any claims. You sign here, admit everything, and agree to walk away with nothing. If you sign, I bent down and looked him in the eye. I'll keep this tax evasion file. I won't send it to the FBI. You'll be broke, you'll be in debt, but you'll be free. You can drive Uber or do whatever you want to pay it off. But if you don't sign, I checked my watch and started counting down. The police are waiting downstairs in the lobby. I send one text and they come up here and cuff you immediately for embezzlement and money laundering. You have 60 seconds to decide, freedom in poverty or rotting in prison. 59, 58, 57. The entire ballroom held its breath. No one dared make a sound. My count landed like a sledgehammer on every beat of Mark's heart. Mark lifted his head, tears and snot all over his face. He looked around for help. He looked at Jessica. "Jess, help me. Your dad's a lawyer." Jessica turned away, voice flat. "Don't drag me into this. We're done. I can't be involved with criminals." She gathered her dress and hurried out, heels clicking like nails being driven into the coffin of their affair. 40. 39. I kept counting, emotionless. "Jerry, do something!" Mark screamed at his lawyer. Jerry shook his head and packed his briefcase. "Sign it, Mark. It's the best deal you'll get. She has you by the throat. I'm withdrawing from this matter." Mark was alone on the wide stage. The spotlight now burned him. He looked at me, the wife he had belittled, betrayed, planned to discard. In my eyes he saw no love and no hate, only contempt for a loser. 10, 9, 8. "Give it to me! I'll sign! I'll sign!" Mark yelled, his voice breaking. He snatched the paper and pen from my hand. His hand shook so hard his signature looked like a worm crawl. He signed, threw the pen to the floor, and panted like he'd just run a marathon. I picked up the page and checked the signature carefully. Perfect. The stellar logistics empire was now entirely mine, clean, legally airtight. "Good," I said, slipping the page into my folder. Then I turned to the two guards. "Gentlemen, escort the former CEO out of the building, and make sure he doesn't take anything that belongs to the company. Even the suit he's wearing. It was bought with the company card." Mark stared at me. "Sarah, you can't—" "Out!" I barked. The first time all night I raised my voice. The force of it made him shrink. The guards hauled Mark up by the arms. They dragged him past the banquet tables, past 200 guests, people who once applauded him and now watched with disgust and pity. Mark kept his head down, unable to meet anyone's eyes, and he was thrown out of the Ritz-Carlton like a bag of trash. I stood on the stage and adjusted the microphone. The room was still silent. "Sorry for the interruption." I smiled and lifted my champagne again. "Now, who wants dessert? The chocolate mousse here is excellent. It's sweet, like the taste of justice." The ballroom exploded into applause. 14 months. That was how long it had been since that fateful night at the Ritz-Carlton. 14 months, and the world had come full circle. I sat in my office on the 45th floor, looking down at Chicago as the lights came on. But this time, the nameplate on my desk didn't say CFO or Mrs. Paul and Reynolds. It was engraved in solid gold. Sarah Jenkins, CEO and founder, Phoenix Logistics. Yes, I renamed the company. Mark's Stellar sounded flashy but hollow. Phoenix fit better. The bird that rises from ashes. Under my leadership, the company didn't just recover, it grew by 300%. I cut Mark's meaningless luxury spending, invested heavily in automation tech, the thing Mark always called too expensive, And most importantly, I treated employees with respect. No more lavish executive lunches while warehouse workers ate sandwiches. Forbes magazine sent me a preview copy of this month's issue. My face was on the cover with a big headline, "The Logistics Queen: How Sarah Jenkins Turned a Company on the Brink of Collapse into a $100 million empire." But the sweetest revenge wasn't on glossy pages. It was on a Friday night last week. I attended the Winter Gala charity dinner at one of the city's most upscale restaurants. I stepped out of a brand new Bentley Flying Spur, bought with my own year-end bonus, not with a corporate credit card. Light snow was falling. I pulled my faux fur coat tighter around my shoulders, waiting for the valet to drive the car away. "Good evening, ma'am. Watch your step," the valet said, his voice hoarse and strangely familiar. I froze. My heart didn't race with fear or ache with pain. It simply beat one calm, recognizing thud. I turned around. Under the burgundy uniform cap with the restaurant logo, that face was gaunt, hollow, a decade older. Deep wrinkles carved his forehead. The charming blue eyes from before were now dull with exhaustion, and maybe cheap liquor. It was Mark. The man who once wore $5,000 suits now wore an oversized uniform jacket, shivering in below-freezing cold to open car doors for people he once called lesser rivals. Mark recognized me at the same moment I saw him. His eyes went wide, locked on the diamond necklace at my throat, then on the luxury Bentley. His mouth opened. His hand trembled around my car key. "Sarah," he breathed, his voice cracking in the cold wind. I smiled. Not a mocking smile, just the polite smile you give a stranger. "Oh, hi, Mark. The world really is a small place," I said softly. Mark dropped his gaze, humiliated. He fidgeted with the hem of his jacket. I, I'm managing the parking team here, just temporarily. I've got a few startup projects about to take off." He was still lying, still that pathetic ego. I knew he had filed for personal bankruptcy 6 months earlier. No one in the industry wanted to hire an embezzler and a fraud. He was blacklisted by every recruiting firm. "Good for you," I nodded, cutting off his excuses. "How's Jessica doing?" Mark gave a bitter laugh. "Her? The moment I ran out of money, she jumped to some used car dealer in Jersey. I heard he dumped her too when he found out she was secretly texting her ex. Now she sells scam weight loss teas on TikTok to get by." A more perfect ending for that pair was impossible. Another car pulled up, honking impatiently for Mark to hurry. Mark flinched, flustered. I have to work. Sarah, listen, I know I was wrong. Could you... I mean, does the company need drivers? Any position? I swear I'll do well. I really need money. Watching the man who used to be my whole world now begging for a low-level job, I realized I felt nothing. No hate, only pity for someone who never valued what he had. I opened my wallet and pulled out a $100 bill. "I don't hire dishonest people, Mark. Principles are principles," I said, sliding the bill into his breast pocket. "But this is a tip. Get yourself a hot meal. And be careful with my car. Don't scratch it." I turned and walked into the bright lights of the gala, leaving Mark standing frozen under falling snow, gripping that $100 bill, the final handout from the wife he betrayed. Inside, I breathed in the scent of lilies and expensive wine. Freedom. That was the smell of freedom. 3 hard lessons for you. 1. Never confuse silence with stupidity. Villains often think that if you aren't screaming, you don't know anything. Wrong. A smart woman's silence is when she's sharpening the knife. Don't confront an affair with tears. Confront it with data, evidence, and the law. When you strike, make sure it's fatal. 2. A prenup and financial independence are life insurance. Never believe the promise, "I'll take care of you for life." Love is emotion, but marriage is an economic contract. Always know your household finances. Always have your own emergency fund, and never hesitate to sign documents that protect your rights. Financial naivety is the fastest road to tragedy. 3. The best revenge isn't hurting them, it's living better than they do. I could have sent Mark to prison, but letting him live a failed life, watching me thrive every day in the headlines, was the cruelest punishment. He has to live each day regretting that he traded a precious gem for a rock on the roadside. Your happiness is the sweetest torture for your enemy. The end. Thank you for following Sarah's journey. If you felt satisfied with this ending, if you believe karma always arrives right on time, do these 3 things right now. 1. Hit like on this video to support strong women. 2. Comment the phrase, "Justice served," below, so I know you watched to the very end. 3. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next premium revenge stories coming next week. I am Curtain Falls. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.